entering the Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now will get you a deposit bonus of up to $250. Travelers Championship, picks, and research, and hell, we'll even try to guess the odds on this one. If you loved watching the U.S. Open with all of your favorite stars in a hard competition, you're going to love the Travelers Championship with a lot of those same names, but not all of the best names because the live guys obviously can't play, and none of the scrubs that you saw in the field in a much easier course in the Northeast, just outside of Hartford in Cromwell, Connecticut. 69 players in the field this week. It is a signature event, which means that it has no backing of Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, or the estate of Arnold Palmer, so there is no cut at this event. So you're going to get all 4 rounds out of everyone, unless it's like Hideki and he withdraws, which I would be on the lookout for, because you never know with that guy. But it does seem like everyone, at least right now, is committed to playing in this tournament a final of the troika of signature event, major, and signature event, a horrible part of the schedule in terms of what's going to happen to some of these other tournaments, like when we talk about the Rocket Mortgage next week, when basically no one is showing up to play in that one. And then it's overseas for the Genesis Scottish, then the Open Championship, then the 3M, the Olympics, and this is like the last big stretch that we're having. Hopefully the U.S. Open went really well for you. Obviously, I'm recording this before the conclusion of the U.S. Open, so I do not know what is going to happen on the Sunday. Hopefully it's fireworks. If my guys can't win, I want Bryson to win or Rory to win, but we'll see. I mean, I don't think that anyone is cheering for Patrick Cantlay, so you can almost pencil him in as the winner because that's just what happens with these things. But good luck to anyone who has sold live tickets, live lineups, whatever it is out there. And let's get to the course at TPC River Highlands. TPC River Highlands is the shortest course so far on tour this year, even shorter than Pebble Beach, at least at the official listed scorecard that we've seen. It's another peach dye track measuring just 6,841 yards. The course boasts 8 par 4s, measuring between 400 and 450 yards while playing as a par 70. There's another 2 par 4s coming in below 400 yards as well. The most notable being number 15, a drivable 296-yard hole that over 90% of the field goes for from the tee box. So regardless of distance, guys are going for it. There's a lake on the other side that you can put your ball into the water in, but you can still potentially get it up and down from par from there. So it's not really a risk-reward. It's just a reward-type short par 4, the good ones. With its minuscule length, TPC River Highlands opens the door for almost any style of player. That's how you get a Dustin Johnson and Brennan Todd duel in the final group, as well as Bubba Watson and Chez Reavie winning in consecutive seasons. You got to be on fire with your approaches, and you got to make your putts. Looking back at the top 5 finishers over the past 7 years, it's clear that regardless of driving distance, approach, and putting, as I just mentioned, are the 2 most important factors at the top of the leaderboard, as is the case for most courses that become birdie fests. Off the tee has been twice as important as around the green, and players hit almost 70% of fairways at TPC River Highlands against a PGA Tour average of 62%. That is the 3rd consecutive week we have seen a course with over 70% hit fairway rate, so be on the lookout again on Underdog. The moment tee times are released, we cleaned up very handsomely when those lines got released on Tuesday afternoon for the U.S. Open. Everyone besides Hideki hit their over, so if the 8-legger lost by 1, the 5-legger cashed immediately. I played some 3, played some 4, played some 2, just cashed in bigly. Everyone who jumped on those ones early because they all got boosted by either a fairway or a fairway and a half even at some spots. So if you do see that the number comes in at 9, 9.5, 8.5 for some players, just pound the hires on Underdog on those because they will all eventually be 9.5, 10, 10.5s by the time that those lines get beaten to place, because that's what they should be. So be on the lookout for that. Got to hit them early if you're going to hit them. So the big hitters don't even have to dial back with their drivers. Basically, the golfer who can hit their wedges the closest is going to win. That is this entire game at TPC River Highlands. And looking at the plotting on approaches, thanks to Fantasy National, which we will dig into here in a minute, fantasynational.com/Mayo to get yourself 20% off. You'll see the plurality of irons this week come from 175 and in. That is the opposite of most courses. When you have a course that's not even 6,900 yards, that makes a lot of logical sense, right? One thing to consider when looking at the past events is the change in the greens. For years, the bent grass putting surfaces were some of the slowest on the PGA Tour. 4 years ago, 5 now actually, they were reconstructed with bent grass and a POA mix, and the greens now run on the faster side of things, as we've seen the past few seasons. And while this is a Pete Dye track, there has been considerable crossover between the top of the leaderboards in the Valspar Championship, Riviera, and Phoenix over the years. Those are all Keegan places, by the way, so I really should have just thought about his name when it came up, and it goes beyond him and Bubba Watson, who won 3 times at Riv. He won 3 times at TPC River Highlands before he made the jump to become the captain of the Range Goats over on Liv. Paul Casey had a ton of success here. Ditto with Dustin Johnson, Kevin Streelman, and Jordan Spieth. Both won the Valspar and Travelers in their careers. I don't really know why. Maybe it's a shot shaping issue, but there are a lot of players in the week who have experienced success at all 3 of those courses, but because this is an elevated event now, have rarely played in the Travelers Championship. Digging a little bit more into the scorecard, the par 3s, the average distance is 189 yards, 3 of the 6 toughest holes on the course. All 3 of them carry a sub 13% birdie rate, with 2 of them seeing over 18% of the golfers make bogey or worse. Keegan Radley won this event last season, and half of his bogeys for the week came on the par 3s. He only had 4 bogeys for the entire event, but still, 2 of them came on par 3s. Actually, 3 of them came on par 3s. The par 4s, as I mentioned, there's 8 of them between 400 and 450 yards. The average distance is 416 yards. The 3 toughest holes on the course are all par 4s, number 4, 10, and 17, all of which have an over par rate of 22%. Hole 17 can undo you, a 5% double or worse rate. Keegan played that hole at 1 under during his win last season. The top 3 finishers a year ago combined to play that hole at even, helping them keep reasonably clean cards and some pretty big paychecks, because it was a signature event last year as well. The 2 par 5s, average distance of 549 yards, the 2 easiest holes on the course, which isn't surprising, although hole 6 sees 8.5% of players actually come in over par, which is kind of crazy to think about. They make bogey or worse than that, but an eagle rate of 1%, 35.1% birdie rate for number 5. And then when you get to number 13, there's almost a 3% eagle rate and almost a 40% birdie rate, although the bogey percentage is around 12.5%, 4.4 double or worse. So it is possible to make some bigger numbers on these holes. Last year, Keegan and Harmon birdied at least one of the par 5s in each round. Well, Zach Blair didn't do that. He was the only one of those 3 to record an eagle. He did it on 13 during the final round, played the final 6 holes at 5 under to earn his share of second. Obviously, he's coming in and having a pretty good U.S. Open, but he will not be in the field this week. And in terms of the DraftKings streak, as we jump over to Fantasy National right now and take a look at the scorecard, you'll see that there are gettable 3-hole stretches on both of the 9s, but if we're talking about going front to back or back to front, playing the course in order is the way to go, because you can see number 10 is the second most difficult hole on the course, with a almost 20% bogey rate, almost a 3% double or worse rate, and only a birdie percentage of 11%. Whereas even if you swing the other way, number 18 has a 16.3%, and then number 2, one of the easiest holes on the course, and then 1 and 3 are both on the easier side with birdie rates of 16% and 18%. And hell, you can make birdie on number 17, that difficult par 4, but it's only a 15% rate with a bogey rate of 17%. The lowest birdie rate on the course is number 4 and 5, but those don't factor into it. And then after that, it is number 10. So playing it front to back, if you're playing Showdown, is probably the way that you want to go. You can see the top 10 finishers, big on putting, big on approach, then off the tee, then around the green. But let's shrink that down a little bit more, and we'll take a look at the top 5 finishers, and it comes even a bit more pronounced. Basically, a stroke per round on approach, a stroke per round putting, and half a stroke per round off the tee, and you're off to the races. Ball striking outweighs short game here amongst the top 5 finishers. Beat up on the par 5, score on the easier par 4s, be on your way. You can see there is those 8 holes that are on the shorter side. Then you actually have 2 that are below 350. Again, only one of them is drivable. And here's what I was talking about before in terms of the average shot distribution. So you're going to have your approaches on the par 5s come in from beyond 200 yards. That's really where this number comes from. And I believe one of the par 3s, number 5, number 8 are both beyond 200 yards. So they're getting, that's where the proximity from 200 plus is getting soaked up. Very 10% of shots from 175 to 200, and even for some of the bigger hitters, that probably comes into play on the par fives for them. But everything else, wedge fest. That's all you're going to see this week. The cut line, I guess it doesn't really matter because there's no cut now. It was 3 under last year, usually under par. You're going to see a lot of birdies this week. The green regulation percentage is almost 70%. Driving accuracy, 68%, so right around 70. You're going to see some low scores. The average, not the average, but the mean score here is around 68, so 2 under par. Very few 3-putts because the greens are a bit on the smaller side, only 5,000 square foot greens. And driving distance a little bit lower because you can dial it back if you want to, and you don't need to, but if you're going to get into wedge range anyway, you might as well dial in on the accuracy. Unless you're Bryson, and I guess Bryson's not playing, so it doesn't matter to him. When he finally put the driver back in the bag on, I think it was 15 on Saturday, and he got boos from the crowd. He asked him not to boo for not taking out the smoke wagon. Ended up hitting he ended up missing the birdie putt. He just hit his, I think it was a 4-iron. Maybe it was, no, he doesn't have a 4-iron. It was a 5-iron. He ended up hitting that right into the native area, to the wire grass, and ended up putting it to 8 feet anyway for birdie. Missed the putt. But if he had just went at it with the driver, who knows what would have happened? Let's take a look at the tournament history from what we've seen. This has only been an elevated event, I believe, for 1 year. Because, in 2022, who won? Xander won. Yeah, that's when he went on his run of back-to-back wins because he won the Genesis Scottish Open the next week. But last year, Keegan Bradley in a bit of a runaway as well. It was just Keegan's to lose the entire time. You can see he wins by 3. Let's see here. Yeah, he wins by 3, clear of Zach Blair and Brian Harmon. He was tied for 2 after the opening round and opened up a big lead with 62, 63, 64 start. Blair was 6 shots better than him on Sunday, but it really didn't make that much of a difference. And how'd he do it? Exactly what we said before. 7.3 on approach, 7 putting, nothing really anywhere else. There's obviously different ways you can cobble that together, but that's really the one that you want to go with. Scotty was right there in terms of tee to green, but just didn't make enough putts to truly contend. Ditto for Alex Smalley that week as well. Overall, it was Keegan, Harmon, Blair, Scotty, Shez, who had been a previous winner here, and Cantlay, Rory, Denny, Smalley, Minwoo, Corey Connors, Justin Thomas. That was everyone who finished inside the top 10. Only Connors and Thomas lost strokes putting of anyone who finished, and Russell Henley lost 0.1 strokes putting. That was everyone who finished inside the top 30 that week. Only 3 of them dropped strokes on the green. Justin Thomas was the biggest loser of them all, but that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone who has watched Justin Thomas putt. Let's take a look at some of the proximity ranges to see if we can glean anything else from that. Bradley was the top putter of the week, while 3 of the top 4 putters did cash top 10 paychecks. And you can kind of see this 150 to 175, 100 to, look at 100 to 125. Everyone gained on the field except for Griot and Shane Lowry inside the top 20. And if we just kind of sort by that of who gained the most, it was Tom Kim, but he was kind of disastrous in other places, couldn't make a putt to save his life, but his approach play was dead on. Tom Kim, we're going to throw him on the list as an early favorite just to see. Go back in time a little bit and try to check out what Tom Kim has been up to. And we can see some of his proximity stats here coming in. We'll take a look at the Travelers from last year. Yeah, there it is. And we'll take a look at what went wrong for Tom Kim a year ago. Because how do you hit your approaches that well? But where are we at with strokes gained here? There we are, strokes gained. How do you hit your approaches that well and come T38 in a limited field? There you go. You lose 2 strokes around the green. You lose 2 strokes around the green, almost 2 strokes on the green. That's just not going to cut it. But tee to green, even though he lost 2 around the green, was still fine. The approaches were quite good, and we know that he's been playing better golf coming in over the past 3 weeks or so. We take a look at what he's up to. Obviously, he's having a pretty good U.S. Open. We'll see how that turns out on Sunday. He was pretty good. Very similar performance, but worse at the Memorial 2 weeks ago of what he did at Travelers. Good approach, good off the tee. Miserable in the short game. At the Canadian Open, he did very well across the board. So if he can get his putter rolling, maybe he doesn't, maybe he can't contend with these greens at all. But The second time he's seeing them might be a little bit easier for him, but I like the way that his game is going at the moment. But this, 100 to 125, you get a fourth place finisher, 1, 9, 9, 4, and 5 all inside the top 15. And then some of the other guys, we see they probably pissed it away in other spots where you see Ryan Blum was great there, but terrible from 125 to 150, terrible from beyond 200 yards. You just can't do that. It was very similar with Hideki as well. Maybe this could be a decent Hideki course. I don't know. Will Hideki make enough of his putts? Will he even compete? Or will he suffer from Roxbury syndrome from listening to What Is Love too often and hurt his neck once again, or smash it, just like Will Ferrell did in the movie? If people remember that movie from the late 90s. I love Night at the Rocks. Who does? Richard Grieco jumping like 21 Jump Street in here. So that's what happened last year. So the years before that, I mean, that's the only elevated event we can point to. The year before that, you have Xander Schauffele ended up winning. He was T3 after day one. He opened with consecutive 63s, tied for the round of the day on Friday. He was the fourth best putter in the field for the week, gaining almost 8 strokes, and 7 of the top 12 putters for the week cashed top 10 paychecks. Putting can save you here. 5 of the top 12 finishers lost ground off the tee and approach, but made it up with putting in 2022. 2021, Harris English was the winner. People should remember that with that lengthy playoff over Kramer Hickok. That was just went on and on. It was the playoff that would never end. He shot 68 or better in every round. During the week, he had a 65 on Sunday. The top 4 putters of the week all finished with at least a share of 5th place, including a crazy week from Bryce Garnett, where he lost off the tee, lost 3 strokes on approach, and gained 14 strokes putting. But he is not in the field. I don't think that Garnett is in the field. No, he is not in the field this week. So, sorry, take a hike. I think I bet him at something recently, and he was just an absolute travesty. I think it was the Canadian Open, actually. He was horrible. It's probably why he's not in right now. Dustin Johnson won in 2020. This was the best outright betting stretch of my lifetime. Coming out of COVID, we had the guy, Berger ended up winning at Colonial coming out of COVID. Then we hit Webb Simpson at the Travelers. Then we hit Dustin this week, and Dustin's odds had fallen down to 20 or 25 to 1. And he was dueling with the Todd father for the longest time. Todd ended up coming T11 that week, but it was a 61 from Dustin on Saturday. It was the spike round that he needed to get inside of the top 4. Mac Hughes opened the tournament with a 60. Will Gordon posted a 62 on Friday. DJ was the 4th best putter of the week, and 10 of the top 14 putters for the week finished T11 or better. If you gained anything off the tee and you were a top 14 putter, you gained inside the top 11 and cashed a very nice payday coming out of that. In 2019, that's when Chez Reavie, coming off a great week at Pebble Beach at the U.S. Open, carded nothing worse than a 66 through 3 days, and he just coasted with a Sunday 69, beating Keegan Bradley that year by 3. No, what did he beat Keegan Bradley by? 4. He beat him by 4. Him and Zach Sucher and Keegan Bradley tied for second place. You can see Brian Harman here, 4 top 10s in the past 5 years. Only 2020 coming out of COVID is when he was cut. So I would expect Harman to be a pretty popular pick this week, even in an elevated event field. You can see, much like last week, we kind of pointed to Sawgrass, a lot of good Sawgrass players here, both Pete Dye courses. So that does make a ton of sense. The year before that, nice cash on Bubba Watson, beat Paul Casey, Stuart Sink, JB Holmes, and Bo Hosler by 3 strokes that year. And he was just 63 Friday, Saturday, and just started to run away with it. And he ended up coming back from 6 down on Casey, who had led through 3 rounds. Casey got stuck behind a tree at one point and just couldn't end up closing the door on Bubba. Bubba was just making everything that week. So who else has played well here over the past 5 years? Now, some of the guys don't have a lot of experience at this course because they just simply were not playing it before it was a signature event because they didn't have to, and it didn't have a lot of payday. But you see Cantlay, Harman, Keegan, Xander, Rory have been the best 5 players over the past 5 years, and that includes only 3 starts from Xander and 3 starts from Rory. Every Rory finish has been inside the top 20, including a T7 in 2023. In 2022, obviously, as I mentioned, Xander won that year. Harris English has played this very well. Obviously, has a win on his card. Jason Day, Mac Hughes, Sam Burns, Victor Hovland in only 3 starts. The Gala in only 3 starts, but that's mainly off the back of his T2 in 2022. Ditto for JT Poston. For overall consistency, it has been basically the Brian Harman Open over the years, and Cantlay has 1 top 10 finish in the past 5 years, but no finish worse than T15. He's just been very middling here, but that's worked out quite well for him over the years. Let's take a look at the full field. Again, only 69 players. The only outlier that you're going to see here is Michael Thorbjornsen is in the field. He was number 1 in the college ranks now that the college season is over, and the number 1 player in that ends up getting their PGA Tour card for the rest of the season. The other guys go to the Corn Ferry Tour. So we've seen Michael Thorbjornsen, and the reason that he's in this isn't because he won it, it's because he's played at the Travelers and played it on exemption multiple times. He actually played in this field last year as a signature event and played very poorly. However, the year before that, he was 4th at the Travelers. More to do with his putting than anything. He played the John Deere last year, ended up coming inside the top 20, and he has played the Dubai Hero on the DP World Tour each of the past 2 seasons, including this January. I can't remember if that's one that Rory won or Fleetwood won, but Rory played in both of them. He ended up T11 this year. I believe he was T18 the year before that. Dude's a real player, and I wouldn't be crazy to see him play really well this week, or even he'll probably end up playing in Detroit the week after. Like, you probably want to be looking at him right away. We've seen some of these guys come in and make an immediate impact. We'll see where that ends up going for him, but we'll see how that goes. Travelers, good at the top in terms of a stat model. And we'll take a closer look into how this model is going to work. Ball striking 25%, approach 15 off the tee. So just an overemphasis on ball striking. Par 4s gained overall 5%. Par 4s 400 to 450, 10%. Par 5s 10%. Opportunities gained 5%. Proximity 100 to 125. 150 to 175, 125 to 150. Throw them in there. We're going to boost up 125 to 150 to 6% a little bit. Putting 5 to 10, 10 to 15 at 5%. So we'll just chuck that in and see how that goes. See over the past 12 rounds who comes in hot. Obviously, we don't have the U.S. Open sets. Oh, this guy, Scotty Scheffler, he ranks out to be number 1. Okay, that's good to know. He's a good player. Should probably bet him. Xander, Hovland, Morikawa, Connors is the top 5. Then you have Rory, Finau, Keegan, Ludwig, Ben An as the rest of the top 10. Hoagie, Straka, Ben Griffin, Tommy Fleetwood, and Tom Kim at 15. After that, it's Hideki, Justin Thomas, Sam Burns, Austin Eckroat, and Russell Henley. That is the entire top 20. If we take a look at that key range, the 100 to 125 that we talked about a little bit earlier, Bez is there, and Bez has also been the best player on short par 4, so we'll throw Bez on. He didn't really, we bet him this week. I bet him this week and played him a ton on DraftKings, as I know a lot of you people did as well. I wouldn't say that I actually have no idea how he's doing on Sunday, if he's even teed off yet. He's not having a bad week at all. It's just he never really got himself in the tournament. He's right around that top 30 right now, which would cash one of the best bets if he can get inside that top 30 by the end of the week. The rest of his approaches from that level are not great, though. So if we're looking at guys overall in the short term, at least, who have been excellent from that range. Ooh, Hoagie. Maybe I should go back to Hoagie here. I didn't hear a peep of him at the U.S. Open. I don't even know if he was in the U.S. Open. Maybe he wasn't. He was. He finished a +8. He missed the cut. So he's well-rested coming in. That's a narrative that I can spin on that. But Seamus Power and Tom Hoagie are 2 of the players that do the best across all 3 of those key wedge range is that we've seen. So does Scotty Scheffler. No surprise there. Jake Knapp actually does really well with them. So does Akshay, Poston, Lucas Glover. Kitayama does okay, as does Lee Hodges. Does it remain Lee Hodges' season? How did he do when we all bet him that one week? He was T45 at Memorial. Man, that's a bad off the tee there and bad off the tee at the Charles Schwab. If you can just hit some fairways here, it feels like it can take off the tee out of play a lot. What happened to him? I thought he was doing okay. That's Hoagie. Hodges. Oh yeah, 77 on the weekend. We'll do that to you. So maybe we should be looking at him more for Detroit against a top-end field like this. Maybe it's not the best look. But let's try to expand this range a little bit. So that's past 12 rounds. Very short term. Let's go past 36 and kind of take a look to the beginning of the year till now and to see if anything changes with some of the names that we've already talked about in terms of the wedge. Look at Scotty. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. 46th in short putting. 15th in deep, reasonable size putting. 11th, 1, 6. Yeah, Scotty's going to win by $1 billion if he decides to bring his A game, which he seems to do. Glover, top 10 in all of those proximity ranges. I see Griot's been nails, top 20 against even these guys in 2 of the 3. Connor's been very good, so has Henley, so has Bhatia overall. Scheffler, as mentioned, Scheffler and Glover kind of seem to be the guys here. Anyone else as we scroll down? Not really. Kitayama gets better when you take the 100 to 125 out of his hand, so does Morikawa. Long term, but Morikawa has been a lot better recently from that range, and that range used to be like his range. So past 36 rounds, we take a look at it. Not much has changed at the top of the rankings. You got Scheffler, Xander, Rory, Ludwig, Connors, Hovland, Hoagie, Akshay, Collin, and Hideki. Into Thigala, Benan, Henley, Cam Young. Finau, Bez is number 17. Burns, Eckroat, and Si Woo! Kim, this should be a great Siwoo course, but dude just doesn't putt. Poor guy. I feel like Siwoo got screwed at the U.S. Open. Not that he was going to win, but he played in either the third to last, second to last grouping off the course on Friday, and he was at 1 over. Like, he was right kind of in the mix to potentially make a move on Saturday. He was playing with Sung Jae, and they played number 9 last, and he had a fantastic shot at number 9, but everything was so baked out late on Friday that his ball it could not hold. I don't know how he could have hit it to hold the green. He hit it high. It should have landed soft, but it just skipped off the back. And then, he hits the putt up the hill. It rolls back to his feet. He takes double bogey, and then he's in at 3 over, and then he's absolutely cooked for the entire tournament, which sucks. And that happened a few times. I mean, getting good breaks is a part of winning major championships, especially a U.S. Open like this one. It sucks when you're watching the guy in real time get such a shit break when it comes down to it. Either way, that happens. Let's take a look at the rolling model. I don't think that anything is really going to change that much, but we can always try to see if there's a few names towards the back end that we can find that are pretty good here. So this is the rolling model for Travelers. So with all things being equal on this front, so we'll go last 4, drop down last 100 to basically nothing. We'll go 50, a little bit higher than 4, 24 closer to 12, so 30% for last 12, 24 for last 24, 13 for last 50, 3 for last 100, 13, 19 for 4 and 8. We'll update that, and it's going to tell us Scotty's number 1 in all of these. Xander, Victor, Collin, Rory are the top 5. I mean, they might be the top 5 on the betting board as well, so that shouldn't be shocking. Connors, Finau, Straka, Hoagie, Ludwig are the rest of the top 10 when we look at it this way. Benan, Hideki, Thigala, Bez. So Bez continues to rate out really well, as does Henley. But Henley at all these elevated events opens at 40 to 1 every single time to encourage you not to bet him. Like, for whatever reason, the books love Russell Henley. And I get it. They're probably seeing what we're seeing right here and thinking that, like, if he played this out 40 times, he's probably going to win that many times. Like, he'll win the 1 in 40 times, even against a good field like this, because it sets up so well for him. Ben Griffin, Akshay, Fleetwood, Victor Perez. Eckroat and Hadwin do pretty well down here. There's Tom Kim. Davis Riley's inside the top 30. So are Glover and Kitayama, Svensson and Sung Jae. It's going to be a tough tournament to locate these guys at the very end. Hoagie being inside the top 10 is interesting to me. I never thought he would play well at a U.S. Open anyway, but he needs to get that putter back on the good side of things. And how has he done? He plays the Travelers every year, has never really played it especially well, has no finish better than T35, and that was in 2017. Has gained on the greens only twice in those 10 starts. Terrible around the green. Some of the approach, over 6 on approach twice, but that was like a decade ago. I'm not the biggest on course history, but that is not super encouraging when we look at it. Although Hoagie has showed up at spots earlier this season where he had been playing like ass in his career and played really well. How was Straka played the Travelers, if he has ever really played the Travelers? Terrible on approach, but his approach play has been off the charts awesome. I mean, the hole-in-one at the U.S. Open on Friday will skew that a little bit, but I think that he was first or second in approach on Thursday as well. He just could not make a putt to save his life. Then he got really He was not rewarded for an excellent shot when he made that triple bogey on the front nine on Friday as well. When it hit the pin, he ended up making triple. So maybe Straka, this has been a spot where people have trended towards wins a lot of the time. Like even looking back to Keegan last year, he'd just been playing good golf coming in. Shez, had been playing good golf. Everything was kind of rolling for him. Had a great U.S. Open, traveled across the country. Boom. He ends up getting his win at this course. Bubba was this is one of the Bubba circuit courses, but even to look at that, guys who have just been playing well coming in is a lot of the time what you want to look at. Let's try to look at some of that crossover. The three that I mentioned, the Valspar, so Copperhead, Innisbrook Copperhead, what I say, TPC Scottsdale. You can probably click on the Pete Dye filter for this as well if that's something that you wanted to do. And Riv. Just those were the crossover ones that we had noticed. Bubba courses, Dustin courses, and maybe they're just so much better than everyone else in these fields when they played them. That's why they ended up doing so well. But it doesn't hurt to take a look at them just in case we can find like a comp course name or two that can pop up on that list. I have this over the past, 36 rounds. Let's go 24 rounds for this one just to see what's going on here. Strokes gained total on average. Scheffler, Cantlay, Burns, Xander, Will Zalatoris would be the top five. Nick Taylor, okay. Could this be one of the Nicky T courses? Cam Young, Homa Sahith, Hideki, Spieth, JT, Hovland, Fitz, Taylor Moore. Stroke per round at those types of courses. Obviously, he won the Valspar. Take a look at how he's done at the Travelers over the years. Dietrich, I don't think he's ever played in the Travelers. Jake Knapp, I doubt he has ever played in the Travelers, but has played well in 4 rounds. I believe that was at Riv earlier this year. Keegan is up there as well. Harris English, who is a winner at this event. There's Hoagie. Bobby Mack, okay. Davis Riley, Eric Cole, and Ben Griffin are some of the other names to throw up there. Shank and Tom Kim, Seamus Power as well. It's funny to see Seamus Power rate out really well in terms of what he had done from those wedge ranges to see if he can kind of keep that going. He's had some the approach play at Wells Fargo was really good. The approach play at Heritage was really good. Now, that's Pete Dye course, so that makes some sense. The approach play had been really good until Memorial. I don't know if he qualified for the U.S. Open. I know that he was not on my radar at the U.S. Open. He did play. He missed the cut at +7, but he will be playing in this event. So maybe a look at the bottom of the field for him. So he had a top 30 at an elevated event. I mean, he only plays elevated events well, it seems like. Elevated event T12, elevated event T16, elevated event T27. Canadian Open and Byron Nelson missed the cut. Not enough money for old Seamus Power at the top of those payouts, so he needs to get the big ones when he gets them. How has he played at the Travelers in his career? Missed the cut a year ago in a designated event, but has 2 top 25s in the 2 years before that, predicated mainly on his approach play, which is nice to see. The around the green has been good, and he's putted well at this course. Not great, but well at this course. Okay, so we'll throw Seamus Power into the back end mix, probably for a DraftKings style anyway. So Travelers for Taylor Moore. Now, too much approach is required at this course for him to likely be very good in this scenario. So, yeah, this is not something he does well. He didn't play well at the U.S. Open, but generally speaking, a lot of distance, chipping and putting. Maybe Rocket Mortgage is more of a place to look at him for the following week in Detroit. Anything else that we need to look at here? Probably not. I mean, it's all the same names that we've been seeing playing against each other every third week. It's just at a slightly more gettable course than we're used to. Someone's going to break the bank here and just go wild with putting. And maybe we'll look at spike putting just to see. Let's see, past 36 rounds. Take a decent enough sample, and then we'll go to spike percentage on Fantasy National. And we'll try to see which guys can really put in do we want to say 2.5 per round? We'll say 2 per round. So a spike percentage of 2, which that means that if you gain 2 or more strokes in any of these categories in a single round over the past 36 round, what's the percentage that you do that at? So for example, Ludwig, his tee to green, 42% of the time he's gaining 2 or more strokes tee to green. Is that the Scotty Scheffler? 78%. The next closest is Rory over that time at 50%. That's nuts how much higher that is. So putting, though, take a look at it. Mac Hughes, Michael Thorbjornsson. So 31% for Mac Hughes. Thorbjornsson at 25%. Xander, Fitz, Denny, all at 22%. Then we're into Victor, Harmon, Bez, Wyndham Clark, Dietrich, Malnati, and Nick Dunlap, all at 19%. I want to take a look at Nick Dunlap for a second. Where has he actually played well outside of the American Express? Houston, Memorial. He's starting to get it back a little bit. Even at the Masters, he was great on approach at the Masters, but lost a ton putting. We just do not have access to that data because Augusta National. You got to pay a lot for that stuff, or you have to scrape it, and we don't scrape the stats. We pay for the stats that we have here at Fantasy National. The approach and putting was good at Memorial. Interesting. I didn't realize that he was spiking putting so often, but over the past 36, yeah, it's Mac Hughes. Fitz would be very interesting for this course, I think. He blew up on Saturday after just making the cut, and you see Brian Harmon up there too. Maybe a decent Vic course, because around the green just doesn't really mean all that much here. If he can figure it out, we know that the off the tee and the driving has been really good. He had the very poor 8-over round day one at the U.S. Open, but rebounded quite nicely. Hopefully, that will affect his odds positively for us, and we can catch a decent number, which probably should lead us to guess the odds. At the very top of the leaderboard, it's going to be Scotty Scheffler on the odds board. Probably the top of the leaderboard too. 3-1 in a 69-man field coming off a U.S. Open where he didn't have his best stuff. 3-1 is probably generous at this point, but if Rory ends up coming back and winning the U.S. Open, he could kind of squeeze those odds a little bit closer together. I have Rory in second at 9-1, might be 8. Xander at 12-1, then Ludwig at 16. After that, I got Morikawa at 18, tied with Hovland at 18. And then the guys in the 20s are probably going to be, Spieth will most definitely be there because people just love to bet Spieth at these numbers apparently. And he has a former win. He's a former winner here. People still like betting on him. Other than that, I'm curious to see where Keegan comes in. When I take a look at some of the guys that I talked about, Tom Kim might be like 40, 45 to open. That's a decent number. Harmon should be around that range, especially if he continues to play poorly over the weekend, or at least on Sunday at Pinehurst. So maybe Harmon comes in at 45. Henley will be around that 40. Then you have like your Cantlay will be 22 along with Spieth. Like he'll be in that Spieth range. So will Homa. So will Fleetwood. So will JT. Then you got like Bez. I'll say Bez at 65. Power probably comes in at 125. I'm not going to bet him to win outright, but just guys from the bottom of the board that you might see. Everything's going to be condensed together. I would like that Vic number though. If the Vic number opens with a 2, anywhere near it is probably where I'm going to end up going this week at the top of the board. Just throw out the U.S. Open. He's been playing really well before that outside of a really big blow-up round Saturday afternoon on the back nine at Memorial. But other than that, just his ball striking has been so good, you can get away with a lot of stuff at this course. When we think about some of those comp courses that I talked about, obviously he's played very well at Riviera over the course of his career. Doesn't really play the Valspar all that often, so I wouldn't really worry too much about that. Anyway, that will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy will get you a deposit bonus of up to $250. We got giveaway winners on Monday with Feinberg in order to see who won the $500, who won the Fantasy National memberships for the year, and then Tambo and I will reveal who the winners, at least from the Pat Mayo Experience side of things, are for the cut of his 5% at the Fantasy Golf World Championships next week in Detroit when I do the show with Tambo for the Travelers Championship this week. So thank you all for watching. Smash the like while you're here. Again, good luck with the U.S. Open. Hope it works out well for you, okay? I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!